Often we get asked to comment and to help people get some structures in place that are going into business together. Now, other than thinking about just the legal structure that you're putting in place, it's important to think about the overall structure of the deal and the overall commercial considerations around going into business together. To do this, quite often we use what we call the bucket analogy. And the idea of the bucket analogy is that in going into business together, you're creating a bucket. And that bucket is going to generate and create profits and value. Typically, when you go into business together, you'll agree on a certain ownership percentage. The way we think about it from a bucket perspective is that those ownership percentages result in the distribution of profits and value in accordance with those ownership percentages. So in this example, let's assume it's a 50-50 partnership, meaning that any dividends which come out of the business are to be distributed on a 50-50 basis, and any value that is realized and distributed as capital would also be distributed on a 50-50 basis. One of the things that people fail to often take into account, though, is what is everybody putting into the business? Or as I like to think about it, what are people putting into the top of the bucket? And therefore, what are they taking out of the top of the bucket before we determine the profits and the value which is to be distributed on a 50-50 basis? So the prime example usually is time. So quite often you've got someone putting in a different amount of time to the other business partner. You might have a silent business partner, or you might have a funder, someone who's putting money in and the other party working 100% of their time in the business. So typically in that situation, where you've got one person putting in 100% of their time into the business, they will draw a wage out the top of the bucket, therefore reducing the overall profits in the bucket, which are then available to be distributed on a 50-50 basis. Of course, there are other things that could be put in proportion different to the overall ownership, in this case, the 50-50. You might have that silent partner who's contributed dollars. Now, if they're putting in dollars and the other party isn't putting in dollars, then typically they might get interest on that money that they've contributed before determining the profit to be distributed in the ownership percentages. There might be IP. One person might have an existing business that's established, or a particular piece of IP which is being used. They might put that IP into the business and therefore get maybe a royalty or something, some type of return from that contribution because the other party isn't putting in the same assets or the same contribution in the same proportion.